Hey guys, Shock back here again with this all promised phase 2 Enhancement Shaman guide, the definitive guide to all guides. I feel like the only thing you need to basically make sure you are performing well in terms of both, I'd say, raids and dungeons, potentially as well some PvP tricks, although I'm not the biggest PvPer, for of course Enhancement Shaman in Season of Discovery phase 2. Now, I know I've also promised to upload a Gnomer VOD. Now, I'm not sure, guys, you gotta let me know if actually uploading VODs in terms of raid VODs is actually something you do want to see. I do have a couple of those recorded already. However, again, I haven't edited it, I haven't loaded it up. And to be fair, it's not, my last few runs haven't been perfect. I've managed to get like 99s across, I feel like, all bosses aside from 2 different ones in terms of logs. But yeah, again, do let me know what you guys want to see going forward. I've been playing a lot of Elemental lately as well, so maybe there's some Elemental content there as well to be made. So without further ado, let me just jump straight into today's topic of Enhancement Shaman and how to basically make sure you're playing it correctly. Now, first off, and again, a lot of things are being are being covered with some of my previous videos, the phase 1 guide, and just a couple of my last videos as well. So, you know, a lot of these things won't be brand new for a lot of you guys, but in case they are, here we go. So first off, talents, and actually, sorry, by the way, last thing to mention, this is the 3rd time I'm recording this video, so hopefully this time around it's not going to be 1 hour and my thoughts are going to be concise and clear. So again, straight into it. Talents. Now, in terms of talents, there's generally a couple of different flex spots you can do, but majority of the talents are cookie cutter. You're always going for them. The one big thing to note in terms of enhancement builds and in talents specifically is whether you're ever going to be tanking, whether you are going to be dual wield tanking, which is currently the preferred way to tank in Gnomer because bosses are a joke. They don't really do a whole lot of damage, maybe aside from the last 2. And in reality, the only thing that matters when you're tanking based on your spec is you are doing a shield. And as I mentioned just now, a lot of people are just doing dual wielding. So looking into the talent straight up, I've now started using 5 points in Ancestral Knowledge. I don't feel like you need shield spec because, again, if you're tanking, you're dual wield tanking. So dump your 5 points in Ancestral Knowledge, then it's 5 points in Thunderstrike, and then it's 2 points in Enhancing Totems. At this level, at this role, you now need 3 more points to get down, and these are your first 3 sort of flex spots. I do now have the epic from Thermoplug from the raid, which means I'm almost always putting that 2-handed point here simply because I want to test it. I've actually done a half a raid with the 2-hander as well, and just sometimes just having fun in PvP as well, although again dual wield is good for both PV and PvP. And this point is really not needed, but again, if you want to playtest 2-hand builds as well, you can get that. If not, I'm usually putting 2 points in Ghost, 1 in Improved Lightning Shield, or again 1 point in 2-handed and then 2 points in Ghost Wolf, right? You don't need the dodge. Maybe if you're tanking more on the main tank side, sure. Shield spec not needed, Guardian Totems as well not needed. Going down, you now have 5 points in Flurry, pretty straightforward. Then you get 3 points in your elemental weapons, and here is where you now have 2 more extra flex talents, if you want to call them that. Now, a lot of people are putting them in improved weapon totems, which is fine. It does improve the Wind Fury totem, so if you're the guy doing it for your melee group, if you don't have a Feral Druid, if your second tank is not or rather your main tank is not a Shaman as well, which usually they are, and they can put Wind Fury for the melee, so you don't have to do it. So yeah, again, weapon totems, it's not the best talent. I'm not really a big fan of it because it doesn't give you anything. It might give a bit to your group, but for yourself, it's more or less useless. So what I tend to do is put 1 in parry because shamans can't parry by default. Don't ask me why. Good for tanking, good for PvP, and then I'm dumping my last point in Improved Lightning Shield. Now, you might think, okay, I might want to put 3 points in Lightning Shield just to min-max the damage, but this 15% damage on the 3 balls of Lightning Shield doing 119, they'll now be doing like, well, 120, 130. This is irrelevant, nobody cares about it. you're not pressing lightning shield while you're fighting the boss. You surely are pulling with the buff on top of you already, right? But you're not replacing it mid-fight. You just have too many other buttons to press. So again, I'm doing my last 2 points in parry and in lightning shield. You can do both in weapon totems, or you can flip both those 2 points as well as the ghost tooth and the two-handed in something like anticipation to just get some extra dodge. So yeah, and then wrapping it up with weapon mastery and Stormstrike. Nothing too special here. This is more or less every Enhancement Shaman build these days in terms of the core talents. And where Shaman is gonna get really funky with talents is when we get to level 50 and level 60, because then you can do like 40 here, or sorry, rather 31 here, and then the rest up to Elemental Devastation, or instead Elemental Tree, you can go to Nature's Guidance for this 3% hit with melee and attacks, which is also really good. But again, this is for another time once we get there. Now, moving forward, and actually the reason why I had to record this video again is because I wasn't able to actually screen capture the BiS section of the video, right? So in terms of Bis Gear, and again, I know I've already done one phase 2 guide in terms of pre-BiS and sort of getting you up to standard so you can enter Gnomer VOD I and don't feel like you're like absolutely useless or like with green gear. And this now will focus on simply the best options for all the slots, and how you can acquire those pieces, of course, as well as some other options. You can also, what I usually do, as you know guys, is doing a 60 upgrade, like sort of web browser page and just going over the different pieces. But you can also follow WoWhead's pre-BiS or rather BiS section as well. I believe Krix is doing these ones these days. Yeah, it's from Krix Vibes, really good guy. But again, the set here is more or less what I will show now and explain why this is more or less the best set. But there are a couple of things that you can debate on, so let's just go straight into the 60 upgrades and start by going into the headpiece. Now, headpiece, straightforward. There are 2 different crafted options for leatherworking, especially with crafted materials being now super cheap. Your only real cost is the actual recipe, which costs 25 gold. And you can essentially craft all the epic items if you want to dump 25 gold per item. But in terms of the head, the only 2 options really are the leather one, which gives you hit on use attack speed effect as well as flat weapon damage and agility, and the mail one, which basically gives you the same hit on use effect for poison immunity and nature immunity, and then flat attack power. The items are pretty comparable, I want to say, if you remove the on-use effects, because 32 attack power is a lot, sort of comparable to 3 weapon damage, which I believe is about 12 to 15 strength or so, equating to. So from that sense, these are pretty close. Obviously, you don't get the agility, but then you get a bit more attack power. And then obviously you don't get any intellect from your leather version. You get a bit more from your male one, which again, I wouldn't put too much stress on. We don't really ever run out of mana. The reason why I'm selecting the Gyro linked cow is because the on-use effect is just much better. It gives you flat attack speed, 20% for 10 seconds. This is absolutely crazy. And what you can be doing, again, if you have the resource to afford it, is basically get yourself the leather one, use that, combine it, and we'll get to the macro section soon, but combine it with all the other cooldowns and on-use effects you might have. And then as soon as the effect is done and you move on to the next boss, if you feel like you can afford it, you can craft this as well and just basically replace the heads as you go along, making sure you always keep the sort of highest damage output item on top of your, or equipped, right? And then obviously the other option is Raging Berserk Helm. I don't even know how this is so low, or rather so high above the linked cow. I feel like this is crazy item, but yeah, you can do that as well unless until you get your hands on your epic crafted items. Moving forward, neck, pretty straightforward. The quest item from the quest item from the last boss. Nothing to really discuss here. This item is insane. This is crazy. Gives you so much offensive stats. You just go for that. In the meantime, while you are trying to loot that or get it yourself, obviously, you can do the High Tide Choker from Black Phantom Depths. That's really the only other option. You can also do the Warsong Outriders if you didn't get lucky in BFD either, for just only agility, which is not bad. If you don't have anything else, just use that as well. right? But obviously the epic one is just the best option. Moving to shoulders, pretty straightforward. A rage drop item which gives you 12 agility and 22 attack power. 22 attack power being 11 strength. So that's 12 agility, 11 strength, and a bit of intellect, which is just much better than the second best option in the game, which is the Rescue OOX 22 FE chicken robot quest in Feral, right? It's a pain to get this to drop. It's also a pain to do it if there's no people around. So obviously try gun for Troxlayer pauldrons, but if not, you can always replace those with the failed flying experiment shoulders in the meantime. Going on to the back piece, two realistic options. The first one, 2 blood coins, 2 silver blood coins, sorry, from the PvP Strangletorn event. This gives you flat 1 critical strike with spells and melee. This is really good. It's very easy to get. This should be your sort of default item that you can grind within the first event as soon as you hit level 40 or even before that. And then the only thing that sort of compares it, and I would personally say it's better, is the raid drop item, Drape of Dismantling, giving you strength and agility. Basically, if you do the maths, this gives you 8 strength and then 0.6 melee crit. This gives you 1% melee crit plus some spell crit. So basically you are trading off a bit of critical strike for essentially 16 attack power. For Shaman, it's always good to know how and when to trade off critical strike versus strength, because a lot of items have this sort of mini choice for you. Do you want to get more crit or do you want to stack more attack power? I personally feel like for this specific slot, this item is just much better. The extra strength is, I feel like, much better than this 0.4 critical strike. But you can go with either, and then obviously this is a raid drop, so in the meantime you can always use the STV one. Now moving on to the next piece, the chest, and this is sort of a contentious point in terms of both the chest, the legs and the boots, of course being able to loot both the mail version of the tier set or the leather version of the tier set. Now what I've done actually in my first trade, I got the chest tier piece and I looted it for the mail version, and then I actually compared them and I saw, wait, why did I do that? This gives you 26 attack power, this gives you 34 because of the strength, this gives you 1 critical strike, this gives you 1.3. Sure, it's only melee, but again, you're a melee class. And then also this gives you more stamina, and then there's no intellect. And then obviously if we actually compare the set bonuses, this gives you critical strike on 2 set and useless 3 set, whereas the mail one gives you attack power on the 2 set and chance to restore mana on the 3 set. Now I'll just go and straight up say, I feel like in every single slot the leather item is much better. It gives you more offensive stats. Overall, as a 2 set bonus, it's also better, because not only they give you more attack power, and you might think, okay, but then I get 2 set mail and I offset this with the bonus attack power. Sure you do, but then if you actually get 2 set of the leather one, that's a flat 1 critical strike, again both melee and spells. So I feel like the leather set is what you should be going for. Depends on which items you get to drop. You can maybe decide to convert, like if you get all 3, maybe do 2 leather and a mail. That might be good. Actually, to be fair, if I go in game right now, I'm with electromantic chainmail and a 2 set of leather, so that's not bad. I would still prefer to have the leather piece here, so then I can remove the boots and actually put the best in slot boots. However, again, it's all sort of dependent, with the bottom line being that I feel like the leather set is just simply better. So if you're getting those tokens, just convert them to leather ones. I feel like it's not going to be a mistake, no matter how you look at it. Onto the bracers. Obviously Warsong Gulch Exalted, pretty straightforward, pretty hard to farm. In the meantime, really there's only 2 replacements. You can get the quest item from Shaman in 1000 Needles. I can't remember what was this from. Was it Mouse Storm? Was it Decoy Totem? I don't remember. I think Mouse Storm Totem, right? Oh, Mouse Storm Weapon, right? Regardless, the Storm Chaser bindings are not all that bad compared to the epic version, losing only on a bunch of agility, 7 agility to be precise. So this is a very good replacement until you farm your PvP, or if you're not farming PvP, just get those and then try maybe at some point get the experimental aim stabilizers from the raid, because they just give you essentially the same agility as the Storm Chasers, but a bit more attack power in terms of the strength gain from it, right? So yeah, obviously the BiS is the Warsong one. Two semi-good options right behind it, nothing to be too fussed about. Moving forward, weapons. I feel like again this has no place for debate here. Your main hand weapon is absolutely always going to be Mechatork or Arcano Shredder. If you manage to get your hands on that, this is insane. It has a proc effect, it's a fist weapon, it's a slow fist weapon. It has 34 damage per second, which is the sort of raid level of damage per second for weapons, the epic ones anyway. And this is simply your best in slot, no matter how you look at it. Obviously, a lot of other good options, especially the Mechano Strider Muffler, which I'm currently rocking with because I don't have the epic, as well as a couple of BOEs, as well as the Force of the Hippogriff, the very famous Feralast quest, which you all probably know if you've seen my previous videos. And then obviously there's also Toxic Revenger, which is another epic which you could potentially be needing, and then finally rocking with Mechatork and Revenger in your offhand. But I feel like, one, you're gonna piece rogues, two, I feel like this item is not that great. It has a lot of damage per second, it's very fast, which we don't like too much. In terms of the speed anyway, the damage is really good, yeah, and some proc chance for AoE. But again, we don't scale too good of daggers, we can't get any dagger skill, and then in the end of the day, it's really just a rogue item. So I'll go with Mechatork Arcano Shredder in the main, and then the offhand, again, there's basically no debate. It's Cogmaster's Claw, it's the slowest fist weapon you can get your hands on, insane high-end damage, very good stats, strength, agility, stamina, good for PvE, PvP, everything, right? So this is just basically your best combination of weapons, and this might even get further improved by an item I'll show you in a second. Moving on, trinket slots, pretty standard, the BFD trinket from phase 1 as well as Gnomer gun trinket phase 2. Gyromatic Experiment, same 18 attack power as the BFD one, and a nice 30-minute cooldown on use effect for attack speed, which very nicely ties with the attack speed from the head as well as with the attack speed from the phase 1 gloves, which are still pretty good. So yeah, these are your two trinkets. If you are not able to get either of those, or you have just the one, or you have neither, what you can do, and what I'm doing until I get the Gnomer trinket, is just use Rune of Perfection from the Warsong Gauge reputation there. The level 20 as well as level 40 versions of this item are good, give you spell resistance, or rather decreases the resistance of your targets, the magical resistance of your targets by 20, and then 10 for the first version. So again, this is basically spell hit and some extra stamina, not too bad until you manage to get your hands on both of those. Rings are also pretty nice and easy to get, mainly because if you have Honored with Warsong, you can actually get both versions of the Legionnaire band for level 28 and level 38. Both of them are really good, one of them being the best ring you can get in the game, and then the second slot for best ring goes to the epic drop from Mechatork. Now, unfortunately, this is very like random because there are different rings and they don't always drop, and then when they drop, like, you probably have competition for it unless you soft reserved it. So what I can advise you is get your Legionnaire band, well, actually get both Legionnaire bands. There's a couple of BOEs in the middle which are essentially better than the level 28 Legionnaire band, but unless they're very cheap, you don't really need those. Just rock with double Legionnaire until you get your epic, or maybe again snipe off the auction house one of those three BOEs here, which are very slightly better than Legionnaire band. Nothing to sort of get fussed about, right? Moving on to boots. Now boots, they're essentially three really good options. Quest item in Stranglethorn, Excelsior boots. I used to have this. It's like your pre-BiS item. It's really nice, gives a lot of offensive stats. You can then go with the leather boots from the tier set, or the male ones. However, the male ones are, like, if I actually find them, they're really bad. They give you only agility, there's no strength. If you're maybe already having one male piece from the set and you get the boots, maybe you consider this, but you shouldn't be doing that. You should either get the leather version if you get the tier set, or just rock with the quest item from Stranglethorn Valley. However, above both of those items is the actual BiS, which is a BOE. On my server costs around 30 gold. I still haven't purchased it. 10 agility, 9 strength. Absolutely the most offensive stats you get from boots in this phase. And especially if you do not need the double set from the leather, because you maybe got already the chest and the pants, then you can very easily invest into the Blackforge Greaves and they'll do you a very good job until the end of the phase, right? So that's that. Pants I've already mentioned. There's obviously the male pants are actually not bad. It's only the male boots that are disastrously bad in terms of stats. But again, the leather ones are insane, so much damage stats. And then until you get those, feel free to just use Scarlet Leggings from Scarlet Monastery. Everybody has those. Nice and easy, right? Nice and easy. Moving on, the last 2 slots. And what I'm gonna say for both of those, I feel applies equally again for both slots. Now I feel like for both slots there is the best item you can put in if you do not have the crafted gear, or if your crafted gear is on cooldown. What I mean, basically Machinist gloves are an exact replica of Void Touched leather gloves from phase 1. However, they give you 30 attack power on top when fighting mechanical units, which makes them much better if you have Void Touched on cooldown. The items above that are this Finger of Arcane Accuracy, which yes, gives you hit, but gives you very little agility and nothing else. So that's not great. No other offensive stat aside from the hit. And then as you can see, both the Machinist gloves and the Void Touched already have the hit. So I don't really know why this is so high up in the table. Gauntlets of Divinity, from Scarlet Monastery. This is pretty good, gives you flat attack power, so you sacrifice all the agility and hit for this. If you maybe didn't get any form of a raid drop, this is also a pretty good item. And then the final 2 items to discuss are Gloves of Holy Might, which I do not know why 60 upgrades put it so high. I feel like this item loses a lot of merit if you're not fighting undeads, and you're not fighting undeads anywhere in phase 2. So like, I feel like this 1% critical and 20 attack power is nothing compared to essentially 1% hit, 30 attack power, and some critical, right? So you offset the crit loss from Gloves of Holy Might. So I wouldn't recommend this. Gauntlets of Divinity as well, only if you didn't get either of the Gnomer drops or the leatherworking from phase 1. However, if you do have the leatherworking from phase 1, what I would do is I would put that. In the belt, I would also use the crafted engineering one. And then basically this gives you a head, hands, gloves, and trinket on-use effects, which you can stack on a macro. They all stack together, and you basically are going to be able to every 10 to 15 to 30 minutes, because of the trinket cooldown, completely blast a target and do so much burst damage that you're guaranteed your parse, or you know, just killing the boss, right? Nice and easy. So again, for gloves slot, I will focus on grabbing Machinist gloves as soon as I can. However, if you already have the leatherworking one, make sure you sort of keep an eye on it and on its cooldown. Make sure if you have this on, put that on before the boss fight and use it on the boss, because the 20% attack speed from this one the 10% attack speed from this one, I feel like it's just better than the extra attack power for the duration of like a 45-second boss, right? Very similar with the belt. There is one best one in Gnomer the belt, Dark Vision Girdle. This is just the best one. It gives you hit, it gives you the most attack power and some extra stats. Right behind it, in 60 upgrades, is the Engineering Belt, which I feel like if you get the crit proc, is just the best belt in the game. However, if you don't get the crit proc, I often feel like it just lags, like I'm not getting the extra attack power from it, because there's no attack power on it anywhere. There's only hit and crit. And in that case, you actually have a whole lot of, like, almost 6 different belts below it, which I feel are not all that worse, right? So Skullband gives you flat strength and agility, not bad. This gives you critical and attack power, also not a whole lot of attack power, but also not bad. And then Board Champion and Power Assisting Belt both give you 15 strength, or 14 strength and 15 strength. So that's 30 attack power, so that's also really good. And then what I actually have from all of these very nice options here, guys, if I show you, is actually Tark Soul Ace, which is a quest item that just gives you 13 strength. And yeah, like, you might debate the hit and crit versus 13 strength. However, what I usually do in raids is, if I actually have this on cooldown, I'm swapping it with Dark Solus, Shoelace, sorry, until it comes back on. I just like the attack power and the bigger numbers, although I might be getting a couple more misses here and there. And again, bosses die so fast that I feel like flat stats kind of scales better compared to hit rating for bosses that die really, really fast, right? Like if the fight was 4 minutes, sure, like you miss a whole lot more, so then you prio hit a bit more, but realistically, they die so fast that whether you miss twice or 3 times, compared to having 30 flat attack power during the entirety of those 40-second fight, it just, makes sense. So as I mentioned here, this would be my sort of quote-unquote full Bis list. What I've already mentioned and I can suggest, and this actually goes for the head as well, the red resistance scale hood gives you, I feel like, more offensive stats than the Gnomer linked cow if you do not have the on-use effect. So if you're rich, if you can afford it, you can actually craft both of those items for yourself. Similar with if you have the engineering belt as well as something else. And then same for gloves as well. If you already have the void touched plus a raid item, you can actually do like a pull with all the on-use effects together, pump a lot, and then as soon as the boss is dead, you flip to the other options that I've just mentioned to basically get the sort of flat offensive stats in while those cooldowns are ticking on. And as soon as they're on, then you'd obviously put the on-use effect items back on and then sort of do a full blast for the next boss that you're able to. So that's pretty much the set here, and as I mentioned, it's not all that different from Krix's Bis set for Enhancement Shaman on WoW head. So again, between both and between like any of the options you can find for all of those item slots, you gotta think for yourself, how do you want to juggle that. Overall gearing is, I'd say, rather straightforward. There are not a lot of choices to do. One thing to mention while we are at the sort of Bis section here is actually the weapon enchants. So in terms of every other slot, there is a standard enchant: agility on boots, strength on gloves, strength on bracers, agility here, 2 stats here. Pretty simple. Now, it might be questionable what weapon enchant you wanna enchant your weapons with. Now, Dismantle got buffed like a week and a half ago, and from what I'm looking at in terms of logs, it's actually 5th or 6th most damaging like ability, I guess, for a lot of parsers and a lot of the high-end shamans, as well as myself from what I've seen on my logs. So Dismantle got incredibly buffed. Now, this being said, you want to make sure you have Dismantle on your super good raid items when you go in Gnomer gun. However, if you A, don't have the gold for it, or B, you don't quite yet have the best weapons and you don't want to necessarily spend like a 10 gold on a weapon that you replace in your next run, you can also do the 3 flat melee damage, which is a bit cheaper, and you can put that on both your weapons. This also applies better in PvP because of course Dismantle does nothing in PvP. So if you're more of a sort of a PvE and a PvP guy, you do maybe a lot of STV events and just in general PvP, you might want to consider putting 3 melee damage enchant on your weapons instead of Dismantle. However, do note that Dismantle was buffed and is actually crazy. It procs a lot and it does a reasonable amount of damage, I want to say. Okay, so straight back into the actual game. Now, in terms of the next section of the guide, I just want to go over quickly just rotation, stat prio, weapon imbues, and basically a bit of the shaman stuff that might not be applicable to everyone else as well, and just sort of discuss on how to approach raids and raid bosses as a shaman, just to make sure you sort of perform the best. Now, in terms of stat prio, I've mentioned this before in previous guides as well, but essentially it's strength above attack power, above critical strike, above agility, above any other tertiary stat like intellect, spell hit, spell crit, spell power, spirit, all the rest. The one thing that you might notice I'm skipping is hit rating. Now, there's 2 reasons. So first of all, hit rating comes the most important when you're fighting targets 3 level above you, and if I'm not wrong, I could be, but if I'm not wrong, Gnomer gun bosses are only 2 levels above us. So that's the first bit. And then the second bit is that in reality, yes, hit rating is your most important stat. However, first of all, there's not enough hit rating to like sort of debate what item do you want to put on with hit compared to without hit. All the best items already give you hit rating, and then the ones that do not give you hit rating are just compared to something like for example this one, right? Like, so this gives you hit rating, but in reality you're comparing it to other items based on both the hit, the crit, and on the use effect, which you generally want to have if you're comparing this item to like a flat stat stick item. So from that point, I mean that the hit rating is the best one. However, it's so limited in this phase, and in future phases we're most likely going to get a whole lot of items. I've sort of theory crafted Bis lists for level 60 based on the quasi-quo items we have only, right? Not anything revamped because we don't know about it. And then, to be fair, almost every single item at level 60 with Bis Gear gives you hit rating. And then when we get there, we can now say, okay, so do you trade off a bunch of hit for this, or for like, you know, X amount of attack power, critical strike, whatever else. Currently, you don't really care because you're not sacrificing hit for anything. As I've said, all the best items already give you hit rating. That's also one of the reasons why the pants here is the best, because if I'm not wrong, the male one doesn't give you. Oh no, wait, the male one gives you hit as well, right? So even in the items that give you hit, other options also give you hit. So like you're not really comparing hit rating to anything else in terms of stats. So yeah, from that sense, guys, strength and attack power are the most important. Then you stack the critical, and then it's anything else with as much hit as you can along the way. Now onto sort of weapon imbues and enchants, and just basically the nitty gritty shaman stuff that I know a lot of people in the shaman community have like sort of been play testing with and like debating. Currently I feel like we're doing basically what we were doing in phase 1, and we're doing Wind Fury in the main hand and Rockbiter in the offhand. Now, very similar to phase 1, Rockbiter gives an insane amount of attack power, which is very hard to forego for anything but potentially a Wind Fury in the offhand. Now, why I say this is because both Flame Tongue and Frostband, even with the increased lava large damage on Flame Tongue, I feel like are lacking way. Like using those weapon imbues loses you so much attack power that you're never gonna offset the difference by having a bit of extra lava large damage, or like the actual flame tongue damage, which is like a joke. If you see here, like for example, if I remove my rock biter, if I put flame tongue in the offhand, I am at 400 attack power. If I put this one rock biter, I'm at 780, and then obviously you go in and do Spirit of the Wolf with someone, that's near 1000 attack power. This is too much to skip, as in the rock biter's 400. And again, as I've said, the only sort of debatable thing here I feel like that I haven't necessarily tested and I can't like super surely say is that Wind Fury in the offhand might be a good choice. Now obviously if we go with Wind Fury in the offhand as well as in the main hand pretty obvious, because you're a melee, Wind Fury is the best scaling thing. The most damage you do is from melee attacks. You never wanna not have Wind Fury. I know if you put double rock biter you get like 1.4 thousand attack power, but you're not extra hitting, and our Wind Fury obviously much better than the totem itself because it gives you 2 extra attacks. So like again, Wind Fury in the main hand is like almost like I wanna say 100% regardless. And then offhand enchant is a bit of a debate. Of course, if you go double Wind Fury, obviously your overall damage in DPS is gonna lower. However, here is where you consider your full set of consumables, your world buffs, and then sort of hopefully if you're like pushing for any logs or anything of such sorts, your min-maxed group, where if you have double Wind Fury and those Wind Furies are proccing, and you obviously again have the full set of consumes, maybe even the best gear in the game, then maybe this sort of pushes to or catches up to Rockbiter in offhand. And it really has to depend on how much Wind Fury procs, as well as if you actually already have Cogmaster Claw, because Cogmaster Claw is the slowest offhand, which means having Wind Fury on it, would be better than having Wind Fury on anything else in the offhand, especially if you say get the dagger, the epic dagger from Gnomer Gun. yeah, you're not putting Wind Fury on that. You don't really care if you're gonna poke the target 3 times for 50. Now, if you are poking the target 3 times for like 150, and then 2 of those crit or something, then that's quite fine. But again, currently Wind Fury and Rock Biter is my preferred way to go, and I would suggest you try the same. If you do have threat issues, what I tend to do is actually not start attacking the boss right away. I do a Flame Shock and I do a couple of auto hits before I do my main Stormstrike and Lava Lash abilities. So I know people have been saying, oh, you know, Rock Biter, threat and all that. But again, first of all, most of the shamans are tanks in this phase, so you are never going to rip aggro of them. And then second off, even if your tank isn't a shaman, just you gotta, you know, chill a bit and then go into a couple seconds after the boss has been put to sort of pump your maximum damage, especially if you're popping all your on-use items. And then finally, in terms of just pure shaman stuff, I know I've been asked a couple of times in terms of macros. What can I show you guys in terms of macros and how am I doing that? Honestly, macros, there's just very few I'm using. The first one, which I love and I'm never going out in the open world, or rather in raid, sorry, even in the open world as well, PvP wise. Without this, is just a macro to swap a shield in your offhand. You never know when you're gonna rip off aggro. Last boss hits a lot. World PvP, maybe you get into a 1v1 versus like a paladin. He bubbles, you can't do anything, you know, put in the shield if he's trying to smack you while bubbled, so you take reduced damage. Overall, just having a macro to put the shield on, nice and easy, and make sure obviously your macro, I believe is this one. Wait, no, wait, is it? Where is it? I might not have updated this in a while, but okay, yeah, this is my macro here, but I'm actually equipping the wrong item in the offhand, so I need to fix that. But essentially, as I've said, make sure you have a macro that puts a shield on, and then when you press it again, it puts an offhand instead of the shield again. So that's that. In terms of another macro I very much enjoy these days is actually stacking all of my on-use effects on a single macro. So that would be the head and the gloves on a 10-minute cooldown. And you can potentially bundle your belt as well. Now the belt is on a 15-minute cooldown, so I don't like bundling them together because I want to keep, like, I want to make sure that I synchronize them, and then also quite often obviously the 10-minute ones come back faster. So maybe you are at a boss where you have your 10-minute, but you're not waiting another 5 for your belt. So then in that case, I don't want to be, you know, having them all bundled in a single macro. In that case, I'll just be putting an actual different belt instead of the epic one, and then still rocking my macro for both the other ones. And also what I've done here, this is sort of a tip. I've made an action bar nice and easy right in my face, where I can actually with a press of a button replace those epic items with on-use effects. So then obviously as soon as the boss dies and then I've used those, I can replace them for a good alternative while they come back online. And actually, I think I forgot to mention it in the Bis list. I'm currently testing these Bonk Maestro handguards simply because they give you fist weapon and mace as weapon skill. And currently I'm obviously with the mace and the fist weapon, and then hopefully eventually I get the epic fist weapon, which makes me go double fist weapons, which potentially the fist weapon skill from this item might be worthwhile, or at least equating to that 1% hit I will lose if I'm not using Machinist gloves or the Void Touch gloves. However, again, this is debatable. Bosses are only, again, if I'm not wrong, I could be, but I feel like I'm not, only 2 levels above us, which means hit is less important, and again, there's less hit on gear, and even again, as I mentioned before, I'm not comparing item with hit and without hit. I'm actually comparing item with hit, because weapon skill is hit rating, and items with more hit rating, right? So from that sense, again, this might be something to look at. If you ever loot this item, feel free to give it a test. And yeah, then in terms of more macros, I feel like I'm just using I'm using them equipable or unusable items. I have, oh, of course, start attack. So what I like to do is have start attack cast before Stormstrike. I need to do the same for Lava Lash. This is just making sure that that your character starts auto attacking, and you're not like incidentally pressing Stormstrike and then maybe rotating your character in a weird way, or maybe you haven't even clicked right click on your target and you're there not auto hitting the boss. This is more important, I feel like, for PvP and like for dynamic like running around and like again PvP or even farming quests. Whereas you know, if you're in a raid, you're always behind the boss, like you're always auto attacking it. I feel like you're never gonna forget it, but attach start attack to your Stormstrike and Lava Lash is not necessarily the worst idea ever. Macros, I feel like everything else is pretty much spam macros, recruitment macros, replace items. Yeah, you can do like show to tip stop casting, mouse over macros for poison and disease removal. So you remove those disease and poisons on mouse hover, rather than having to press the target and then press, you know, the actual cure poison. But again, this is more on a PvP side, more on a healing side. Like Enhancement never really presses these buttons, so you know, don't bother too much. And then finally is actually something that not a lot of people, I guess a lot of people are doing, but not a lot of people are too happy about it. I've seen a lot of outrage lately in terms of consumables cost and what consumables you need to be sort of preparing yourself with before going into the raid. Now, world buffs wise, you obviously get whenever you can Dark Moon. That's just 10% damage. You always want that, as well as the Spark of Inspiration, pretty standard. And then what do you do in terms of consumes, right? So I've separated them in a couple of categories. There are the offensive cooldowns, or rather consumes, which are Elixir of Ogre Strength, Elixir of Agility, Firepower, and Arcane Elixir. These are the four sort of long-lasting damage consumables. These are the ones I never go to a raid without. I might not have anything else, but I always have those four. And this is what you should be doing as well. This simply increases your damage overall, strength, agility, firepower, obviously flame shock, searing totem, and then overall spell power here as well for earth shocks, as well as the same flame shock and searing totems. So these are the ones you always want. Note for like the super tryharders, I guess. There is a scroll of strength level 3, which gives you 13 strength and costs like 10 gold and lasts like 30 minutes. You don't need that. This is waste of gold. Like I'm parsing, I have 99 across I think almost all the bosses. I never use scroll of strength because it's retardedly expensive, so just don't do that. But I guess if you have unlimited amount of resource and gold, sure, do that. Then you go on to the defensive consumables. Because we are enhancement, because we're doing rock biters, because you might pull threat, I always want to make sure I have my defensive consumables lined up as well, which are some defense, Elixir of Fortitude pretty standard, Rumsey Black Label for some stamina, as well as a food buff cooked glossy mite fish, which just gives you flat 10% stamina. So those are pretty straightforward. They're not too expensive. You always want to have them as well, I feel like. However, if you're not like uber geared and you're not the tank and you don't expect pulling aggro, you can forego those as well, right? You don't necessarily need them, but I do like having a lot of consumes myself, so that's that. Mana pots and health pots, pretty standard. Always bring a couple. I feel like mana pots more so than health pots, because again, you probably are gonna run out of mana before you pull threat. But then again, if you're very geared or you don't wait tanks to get threat, you might get aggro, you might get slapped. So having an extra health pot on you is always appreciated. And then Gnomer gun specific, you need some nature pots, second boss and last boss. You can pre-pot them before the boss pull, and then mid-fight they're either going to still be on you doing their thing, or you might be able to pop a second one 2 minutes after, or even use another consumable if you need to. And again, the second boss dies so fast, so this is really for the last boss, where you pre-pot before the pull, and then by the time you get to either frost phase or nature phase, you either have these backup or you use something else like a mana pot. Free action potion is a very similar thing, only used on the last boss in Gnomer, the frost phase, so you don't get frozen. I've done the boss without free action potions as well as with free action potions. I feel like in both cases It's pretty easy. You don't really need those, but they're not that expensive. I always like to have a couple of those on me. Plus, it's very nice for world PvP. You know, if you get ganked or get clapped, this could save your life very easily. Especially the way the tower bursty class goes. Paladin comes and stuns you. You do that. You turn around. You slap him. He's dead. Nice and easy. Oh, excuse me. This actually doesn't remove effects from you, right? Of course, I'm bad. I'm bad at PvP. So yeah, if a paladin stuns, you're not gonna be able to use that after. But again, you get my point, right? And then I actually have stamina and spirit scrolls on me because last time we were struggling to find a priest. So I was like, okay, let's go without a priest healer. So I'll just get myself those scrolls. Again, the priest essentially provides both of those buffs if he's disciplined. But a lot of priests these days are healing as shadow because you know they want to play shadow but they don't want to respec. So again, maybe the stamina scroll is not as important, but you definitely can get yourself a spirit scroll, although it's irrelevant, right? It's more so for having a full set of consumes, more so than actually this consume doing anything, because you don't care about spirit. And then the final two, which are the, as I mentioned at the start of this section, the controversial ones, the expensive ones. They're one gold a pop. You are chugging them like candies. Oil of Emulation and Dragon Bread Chili. Now these are very min-maxy consumes. You don't really need them. They don't really do all that much. They do provide some damage increase, but it's not like the difference between this one and an epic weapon, right? Like it's minor. However, they're nice. I like to use them. Oil of Emulation just does AoE around you for 15 seconds. It's cool for the first boss. It's also cool for the second boss before the ads spawn. And it actually ties very nicely on the second boss before the ads spawn. You can actually pop this and then prepare yourself a radiation bomb. If you're engineer, or if you're like, obviously if you're not engineer, you can use the easy throw radiation bombs. Or you can just, if you are engineer, use the high yield radiation bombs. In all cases, you can use other forms of easy throw grenades or meteor frag grenades. Grenades are overall damage increase only if you're able to use them properly to hit multiple targets without losing too much downtime from auto swinging the boss, right? So you can imagine, like, for example, we're fighting, like if this is the boss, we're fighting this boss, right? And then there's like tons of like ads around you. If you're able to line up a bomb to hit them all at the same time, very nice. But then if you know all the ads start spawning and then you're still hitting the boss, and then you're like, oh my god, I want to do the bomb, and now you start casting the bomb but all the small ads have died, then obviously your bomb will only be hitting the boss. But at that point you are better off just auto attacking the entire time than actually casting a bomb. So again, bombs wise, and in the future especially, sapper grenades and whatnot are going to be important and sort of critical, but they're not the end all and be all, right? So bombs are a worthy consumable sort of thing to know about and have it if you can. But yeah, make sure you use them correctly. And then finally, it's Dragon Bread Chili. This is the one that, unlike Oil of Emulation, actually lasts for 10 minutes, which is nice. So you don't really need all that many. Although, if you think about it, if you're not speed running, you might actually be popping one every boss or one every second boss, in case you're clearing trash fast and the people are not slacking. And this simply does some AoE proc chance to splash some AoE around you, right? So this is fine for single target. This is fine for AoE. This is just a fine consumable that doesn't do a whole lot, but it's nice. It's easy to get. It's a bit expensive. It's toward 1 gold, like 80 silver. But again, like, what is 80 silver? Like, surely you can do a couple quests and get yourself a stack of those. I'm not saying use them on every pool. I'm not saying use them on every boss. But if you know you're gunning for those like quick parses, or you wanna, like, you know, round up your full parse table with 99s or 100s or whatever, then this might really be the difference to push you over the edge. So yeah, I feel like this was more or less for me, guys. Now that I think we've been through talents, Bis Gear, rotation, a bit of stats and weapon imbues, some shaman stuff, and then overall macros and consumes. So I feel like this is all I can share for you for now. Do let me know if I've forgotten anything, if I made any terrible mistake with any of the things I've sort of discussed today. This is more of a non-scripted, just ramble, sort of go through everything video. So you know, from that sense, I could have said some dumb stuff. I've recorded this 3 times now, so hopefully there won't be a fourth. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Peace.